So I recently developed a small SimPy simulation library for supply chain simulation for networks with a supplier stage and a consumption stage that could comprise manufacturing at the supplier stage, deliveries via defined connections, and then warehousing and eventually consumption by the consumer at the consumption warehouses. I implemented this library in Python using SimPy, and I made it available in my shop as a Python project. And I wanted to demonstrate in this video that libraries like this can also be made available in R. And you can use SimPy simulations that are modeled in Python inside R with Reticulate. For that, I turned this Python project into an API, or I added an API to this project. This was the previous project content. So there was a main file for execution that took into consideration configurations from the configuration file and outputted the results into a results.csv file. So this was meant as a desktop application, basically, or to execute it in the Python terminal. To be able to use this in R, and for example, to be able to implement this into a Shiny app, I equipped this project with a API that simply wraps access to triggering the simulation with defined parameter values. So for that, I developed an R version which contains the previous Python project in a directory, and then contains a Python API that basically contains a run method or run function, which will take the relevant parameter values that were previously specified in the configuration file, and using these parameter values will then trigger the simulation model that is wrapped. That's basically then packaged into this SEM Python library. And if we go back to this folder now, I wanted to demonstrate that you can now use this Python API in R. So this is basically our interface that I made available in R using Reticulate. So I have a small demonstration here, as an R script, which I'm going to open in RStudio. So here's the R file, and this R file uses Reticulate. So you need to install Reticulate using install packages. We'll install it from CRAN, and then you also need to install all of the Python libraries that are used by this project, and those are listed in the requirements file inside the simulation library that I developed. So you have to execute this command virtual environment install, and then install the file which is accessed with this path, and this will install all the dependent packages, so mainly SimPy. And once you did that, then you can run the SimPy simulation model that is basically wrapped by this package. So what I'm doing here is I'm importing this R script, this Python script SEM, which is basically just containing an interface to triggering the SimPy simulation and consuming the Python library. So that is what I'm doing here. So this is actually a Python script that calls the SimPy simulation application that consumes the SimPy simulation library. And inside this Python script, there is only one function called run, and this is basically the interface to calling the SimPy simulation. So I have to pass in here all the relevant parameter values for the simulation, since this is a supply chain simulation with a supplier stage and a warehousing and consumption stage. The parameters here are related to the manufacturing output of the suppliers, the product groups manufactured by the suppliers, the production program shares of the product groups at the manufacturers, the lifetime of the product, the delivery times, and so on. And then you can simply in R call this interface function. So first I'm going to import reticulate, then I'm going to import the basically the Python API or the interface to this Python library, and now I can run this simulation inside R. So the simulation is currently being built up and executed, and now it's done. The result that is returned by this API, which basically is represented by this run function, is a data frame. So we can see now here the results of the simulation in the form of this data frame. And the results are the ones shown here. And now you could build statistics with this, or do visualization or animation or whatever you want with these results. And of course you could call this interface with other parameter values. So you could implement this into a Shiny app, and then when the user changes relevant parameter values, you could trigger the simulation again and update the results and statistics that are then visualized and presented to the user. So I also made this example available in my shop on my blog, together with the previous SimPy library, so that if you like to use Shiny R or R in general, you can use this simulation library in SimPy, and at the same time you have a template and an interface for how you can call it and run it in R.